Given, and it's also
Today, it's never been
putting the squeeze. They make money on
excessive materialism and militarism. We know full well that racism is still that hound of hell.
Oh, we're good? Okay. Awesome. Welcome to Now in Color, the podcast. Oh, and Angel's here.
Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna do a quick.
I thought you were welcoming me.
Oh, but welcome. Welcome to Now in Color, the podcast that brings those who have been erased from history back to the forefront. As you probably heard, Angel is here with me. Angel Yao is a comedic storyteller, sketch performer, and filmmaker based out of Queens, New York. She is part of the sketch group Asian Pop, who performed at UCB, Joe's Pub, and various festivals. She is also a sketch actor at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. She has a one-woman SNL solo show, a show where the audience helps her make all her dreams come true on stage. She also has a beloved act where she eats a whole lobster within 5 minutes. That's so cool. I want to eat lobster. She has told stories on Risk, Mortified, and Story Collider podcasts. She created Asian American Film Thing, next show March 1st, VHS Presents, and her newest show, On This Day, which is based on the Time Hop app. Her passion is creating autobiographical stop-motion animations about her lonely and awkward childhood. I relate. Welcome, Angel. Thank you so much for coming. We've been emailing for a long time, and I'm sorry. My apartment flooded. But now it's all good because we're actually here at Brick by Brick Studios,
So nice.
where this podcast now lives.
Yay.
Yeah, welcome. You were telling me before we got started that you have a lot of feelings right now about comedy and art, or what are you going through right now?
My group Asian Pop, we do a lot of musical comedy, but our core is about the experiences that Asian Americans go through. But, we kind of make fun of ourselves. That's like mostly what it is. And it's like satire.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I remember seeing you guys a
yeah.
few times. Like I was saying, I saw you guys when Asian AF first came to New York City. And I was like, oh, these are people I would love to hang out with one day. And here we are.
So then there are some just feedback I've been getting from people who maybe haven't seen the show or just kind of has like a gist of what we are. And so pretty much they don't get what satire is.
Yes.
So they feel like we are making fun of Asians and we're highlighting the stereotypes and we're catering and pandering to people who are not Asians and Asian Americans. So it just felt weird because their words were like, and in my comedy, especially because I'm a little bit absurdist and all that. And they were saying how I was not creating a safe space for Asians, and that just...
Oh my
I was
God.
like,
Who said this? Where, on what platform?
Yeah, it's just like a Facebook group that's like...
Fucking Facebook.
And it's the group is about supporting Asian Americans. So I'm not sure what my friend just told me about it. He was in the group, so...
What is this group called? Am I in this group?
I don't want to say.
You don't have to say. You don't have to
I feel
say.
like it's gossip.
It's fine. So
But it's just
I've been in many of these Asian groups where I leave or get kicked out. Because some of them are actually very toxic. Because I don't think they're safe spaces at times. But you were saying, continue.
Yeah, I think it's just how, people feel oppressed and they're like, we have to take a stand. But then they're also oppressing they're doing the same thing, even though I know where they're coming from. Like, they want to promote a certain image, especially, now where, we have to say we want to insert more Asian American stories out there and create like more of a positive light. But then it's like still a little close-minded maybe where you're still assuming and all that.
Yeah, and these are people who haven't even seen Asian Pop, I'm assuming. Because if you see it, you'll know very quickly that it's satire and you're not laughing at Asian Americans.
Right. It's like, we're just
If
saying my
anything,
experience.
in my opinion, it feels like it's almost like you are laughing at audience members who wouldn't quite understand that satire.
It's for
Yeah.
those audience and audience who are Asian Americans like us. They connect to it and they're like they're laughing with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's
So
it's making fun of people who don't. Oh my gosh, that makes me angry.
Yeah, because then separate from it is comedy. So like subjective, and that's always like in the back of my head because when I do it, I feel like I do, like I'm insecure about everything I perform, but I have been getting good feedback. Like I've been doing comedy for a long time now, so I do know what my voice is and how I work. But then I always get reminded of like mainstream comedy where like people are just they just watch stand-up specials and it's just like joke, punchline, joke. And they're so used, and it's mainstream for a reason. So then it's like a reminder of like, oh, my audience might be small, or it's like hard to cater to everyone. But I should still be true to myself. But
Yes.
I'm still like, like they don't get me.
Yeah, that's hard to balance as an artist, I think, because you should be true to yourself. You should be authentic to who you are. And there will be people who can see that. And there will always be those naysayers who are just like, you're not, representing Asians or whoever correctly.
Right.
And it's just like that responsibility, that entire responsibility is like so much to bear, and it shouldn't fall on one person.
Right.
And that's really unfair.
Yeah.
To fall on one person because you have your voice. You're obviously, I don't think you're like painting us in a bad light, and I'm pretty critical about most things like that. But I'm sorry you had to go through that.
It's fine. I'm over it. Haters are gonna hate.
Exactly. I mean, you can also say that you guys are gaining so much notoriety that this is a good thing. Yeah.
I'm sure it happens a lot once, you're out there more, your name's out there.
Yeah. It's like someone was telling me there was a New Yorker article that I probably should have read and I didn't read about how there also is a good thing about bad art and like we shouldn't like just push that to the wayside too. There's also value to it.
One of my things is, like with all the specials coming out, like Netflix specials and the movies with Asian Americans. So like To All the Boys We Love.
To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Peter Kavinsky.
I couldn't finish watching.
Oh no. We're going to have to disagree. Well, let's talk about it.
But it was just it's I don't know, something about it. I was like, it's fine, and maybe it is because it's targeted for a younger audience, perhaps, and the characters.
I'm just a 12-year-old at heart all the time. I'm like a hopeless romantic. So I was like, I will watch this shit like a million times.
I mean, I should actually, but I was just like, okay, I'm busy. Thanks to you.
Yeah.
And even like with Crazy Rich Asian, it's just a movie. I mean, I didn't hate it, but it's like these are popular movies. But I think it's still good. Like I went to see Crazy Rich Asians knowing it's just like a rom-com and all that. And I think we need to put more of those, even if it's whatever, because there's so many bad movies and TV shows with white people and like there's so many, so like even if it's not perfect, the representation, or it's not like a deep storyline or whatever, it's still out there, and so then people wouldn't notice, there's like so I think it is important to just put things out there.
Yes, so we can be normalized in this conversation and entertainment, because, it's okay if we have stupid movies and it's not for everyone, and it's not like some deep, I don't know, art.
Right.
Because there's, like you were saying, like white men get to have mediocre art all the time, and then they go everywhere. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's great.
Yeah.
And I think it's also good that you yourself didn't love To All the Boys I Loved Before, just to show not all Asians will love the one thing, the one Asian movie out there. Yeah. Did you have any more feelings after this, after hearing all these haters talk to you?
Yeah, I think it was just a separate, because I do a lot, especially recently. I'm doing a lot for the Asian American community. So yeah, I started an Asian American film thing.
Yes.
And that was just recent. Maybe it was like 2 years ago I started.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
So and it was just wanting to showcase Asian American filmmakers, and it doesn't have to, like, whatever they create doesn't have to talk about the Asian American experience. It's just about their experience. And it was also for me, because I am a filmmaker, I do the stop motions, and I have such a hard time disciplining myself to keep creating. I have like a notepad of ideas, but then it's like, when do I have time, whatever.
Yes.
So I kind of created it for me to have a deadline.
That's good.
I was like,
Yeah.
I'll just do it. And, like, people are interested, so I know there's going to be an audience. So now it's just for me, I'm like, okay, I'm setting this to help others, but also to help myself.
Yeah.
To, like, push myself to do something.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, this podcast also started out as like, I need to discipline myself to put out content every week, but also put out content that like I love and like want to showcase more of, which happens to be history as well. How did you get into art, or where you are today? Like, what is your personal history?
I am very shy and quiet and awkward. And that's how I was growing up. And I guess the first thing that happened with performance-wise, there was a talent show in high school. I used to work at the Whitney Museum. They had like a youth insights program. So it was just like a program for high schoolers, like seniors. And we worked there twice a week, and it was pretty much giving tours to our peers and families. So at the end of that program, there was a talent show, and I hated talent shows because I'm like, I don't have talents, I don't know it. Like, maybe I was into art back then, so like maybe I'll draw, but like I don't. Even then, I was very insecure about anything I do, so I just. Then I thought it was funny and I said it as a joke. I was like, what if I did stand-up comedy as a talent? Because no one would expect that. And I kept thinking about it. I was like, yeah, what if I do like a weird comedy thing? So then I did it, and I did it in my style where I played up my nervousness. So that was kind of part of the character. So even if I was really nervous, I'm like, that's part of it. So that helped me not get nervous in a way.
Yeah.
And I was telling you earlier, I do have I get so nervous because, and then like my memorization, I feel like goes off the window. Like I just completely blank. So my act, I was recording my, like an inner monologue. So then it played as I'm on stage, my inner monologue would play out. So then I don't really have to memorize anything.
Yes.
And then part of my act, I was reading from my diary, like a fake diary. So then I was actually reading something, not memorized again. Not memorized. So that was like my first stand-up act. It was an inner monologue and reading from my diary.
And from there.
Yeah, and then it went really well. I mean, I had a lot of support. Some of my high school friends came, and my parents were there. And so it went really well. And that feeling of I did something that scared me, and it went well, and people are like giving me so many compliments. I was like obsessed with compliments now because I never had that like reassurance of something that I am insecure about, but now I don't have to be in a way. And then after that, I got into college, and that developed my wanting to perform more and doing comedy, especially because it's such a like you get the reaction right away if they laugh or not, instead of like if it's a film or something where you don't know how people react right away. So I think that addiction of like these good feelings,
Yeah.
it is an addiction.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't do stand up or anything, but I could imagine that feeling is very addictive
Yeah.
and that rush
Yeah.
is very addictive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've definitely seen, I'm one of those people who laughs in the audience even if the comedian is bombing just because I feel it's so bad. I'm just like, this is hilarious. Yeah, that's so cool. So do you still do stand up around the city?
Yeah. So I still do. Yeah, I do a lot of solo. Like the same thing I did at the Wit. I guess it's like not quite stand up and not quite completely different characters. It's still based on me. So it's like little unexpected bits, I would say, when I do like comedy. But on the opposite side, I do storytelling now, and that's just like true stories that I would talk about my life or my thoughts. And then I do Asian pop, so sketch group. So any like sketch stuff, I do just to practice my acting, comedy wise.
Yeah,
So I do that.
that's great. Well, I'm so glad you're here. And you're here to tell a story about Panda Express. Am I correct? So yeah, let's get started.
So Pan Express, I did not know it was owned, I didn't know it was owned by someone from China. Like, I didn't know. I always thought it was white people who made it, or like maybe they bought it from someone and then they're like, we're gonna Americanize this. That was kind of always my feeling. But then I think just 2 years ago, maybe there was a special on Peggy, who she was the one who she started and owns it. And then that's when I knew.
Peggy, what's her last name?
Her last name is Cheng, I think. Let me notes. Yeah, Cheng. CHEUNG. So she, it seemed like such a American success story in a way. She used to be an engineer. She worked at the aerospace, and she had like her doctorate degree in electrical engineering. So I think she was born from Burma, and then she grew up in Hong Kong, and then she came to the United States to study, and that's when she met her husband, and her husband was the one who started the first Panda Express. It was called Panda Inn with her
What
dad.
year was this?
I think this was in 1973.
Okay.
And it was in Pasadena. They were in California. So it was just like a sit-down restaurant, and he started with his dad. And then I think they said it was okay. It wasn't getting really much traction. And then in the 80s, that's when malls started going on everywhere. So they had the idea of making it more like a fast food restaurant, and specifically in malls, because I think that was the first like Chinese fast food restaurant like catered to malls, like not like outside anything. So then with Peggy, I think she was the one who really understood the American culture. And the first thing she knows and said, she was like, Americans hate bones. So we're just going to debone every meat.
That is true. That's true. I'm always like gnawing on bones, and I like see my friends not eating the skin or like the the stuff around it, and I'm like, oh my God, you're missing the best part of this. And fat, I'm just like, you're missing the best part. Like, give me your fat. I will eat it.
And skin. I also love intestine.
Oh my God, yes. I love intestine. I love anything that is like, I guess, not catered to an American palate. I'm just like, I will eat that. Because growing up, I don't know if your parents were like this at all, but they were very much strict about food, and I had to finish everything, even if I hated it. So they like kicked that pickiness habit out of me very quickly. They would do this thing where they just make me sit at the dinner table until I finished everything, and like being like 4 or 5, I would just sit there till like 9 p.m. and like not finish anything. Be like, I'm full. I don't want to eat this, or like, and it's mostly because like I didn't think it tasted good or something. But now I'm just like, I'll eat anything. Give it to me.
It's funny because I think, definitely had that experience of like you have to finish everything, especially with the rice. You have to finish.
Oh
the
yes,
rice
because your husband will
get freckles or
get pockmarks. And I was just like, I'm not having a husband when I grow up.
But it's funny because then I think I was a pretty skinny kid. But then like maybe when puberty happened, or like towards like junior high school, I started to gain weight, but like average weight, I would say.
Yeah.
But then my mom, as I don't know, Asian parent, they're like, oh, you're so fat. And then she's like, I can't believe I told you to finish your food back then. I wish I didn't.
Yeah.
She's like, I didn't realize you're going to become so fat when you're older.
I mean, my mom still says that, and I'm just like, whatever. I don't care. That reminds me of this story of when because I used to go to Taiwan every summer to be with my grandparents. And they have those night markets where they have cheap clothes and cheap food. And like I picked up a skirt that was one size fits all, and it went up to my thighs. Because I went into like the curtain changing room, and I was like, this is such a cute skirt, and I like went up to my thighs. And the lady who was working at that shop was just like, oh, I think you need to like do more sit-ups or something. She told me to like lose weight.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't even know you, lady, and you said this was one size fits all, and it's obviously not.
Yeah, I can't believe. Yeah, they do. Yeah, I've been to like Hong Kong, and yeah, it's always one size fits all.
And it's not. It's totally not. It's like double zero. One size fits all, double zeros.
Yeah, I think I'm like an XXXL, and like whenever I buy stuff from like Amazon, and I have to like research to make sure if it's from China or not.
Yes.
And if it is, I'm like, I have to buy an XXX.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Makes me feel bad.
But anyway, we went on a tangent about like clothes and food. So she picked out the bones. She was like, let's take out bones, because Americans don't like bones.
Yeah. And then I think after that, they hit the 100 mark, where like they had 100 fast food restaurants and malls.
Whoa, so they expanded.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly, it sounds like.
Pretty, yeah. I think, okay, because they were saying, so they said, so 1973, that's when they started in Pasadena. And they said that's the same year when President Nixon visited China. So then I think that was inspired Panda, like the Panda, the name, because they felt like Panda symbolized that visit, and it's like not harmful creature, it's like friendly and cuddly and adorable. So that's how they like came up with that name. And then I think that was mostly how it expanded. I guess the interesting thing about most of it is their motto is people before profit. So they care a lot about their employees and everything, but like they're pretty much self-made billionaires now, so they're really successful.
Are they still alive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're still
And they're still billionaires.
Getting into interviews. And what was the other thing I wanted to say about
Was there any backlash as they expanded, or because President Nixon visited China, there was like a lot of...
Yeah, I think that's when they felt like it's a little bit more open, like they don't feel as threatened, I guess, to embrace, like, we could expand on our Chinese American culture. Because I was just reading in general about like the first Chinese restaurants and all that, and that was in San Francisco, because I think they all started in the West, and when the Chinese first came in, they needed to make their own business because they weren't getting jobs anywhere else. So that's how like all the Chinese restaurants and the laundromat started. And with the Chinese restaurants, they wanted to make food that they're familiar with, but they also don't want to threaten Americans. So that's how these like cuisines with like bones or like stir fry things happen, because they just want to cater to both. And then so like chop suey, I think, was the first like dish that like catered to both. And the one of the other interesting thing is, so they were saying there's a small region outside of Canton, which is Toisan. I don't know if so that was actually the region that kind of started the Chinese American food. So it's funny to see, like, China's so big, but that like one small region went to America first, kind of, and then started the restaurant stuff. And then so it's like that little tiny region is now representing all of Chinese American food in a type that
Yeah.
is. So it's like, oh.
Yeah, and speaking of chop suey, I read that when they were first trying to make food for American palates, it was just like they realized Americans love like sweet and sour-ish stuff, and that's why there is that sweet and sour taste in a lot of Americanized Chinese food now. Like General Tso's or orange chicken. Speaking of, do you have any research about why orange chicken from Panda Express became so popular? I don't know. Yeah.
I know, it's so yeah, like at first, and I think we all get the gut feeling of like, these Chinese restaurants are not, actual Chinese. We all say that, we're like, this is not actual Chinese food. And then we get angry. And then, like, especially like Panda Express, every time there was a new Panda Express that just opened, like, by my neighborhood. And I was so angry when it opened. And this was before I knew, like, who owned it and all that stuff. But now I'm like, I get it. Like, this was before our time, and this is when they're trying to survive.
Yeah.
And that's why they need to cater to Americans, because they have to survive. Otherwise, they either have to leave, or maybe they'll get murdered. Like all these like crazy things. So it's helping me like learn the history of it, and then knowing like, okay, I shouldn't hate on these things that seem like they're catering to.
Yeah. I think for me, it was like I never had the experience of like the gut reaction, unless it was like a white chef and like they had like a definitely exotic size, like stereotypical name. Then I'm like, okay, that's crazy. And I don't know if it's because growing up in Riverside was because of that, because it was just like I never had that lunchbox experience where, my white friends would be like, ew, what the fuck is that? They were always very, like, they led with curiosity and, like, actually really enjoyed authentic Chinese food or whatever. So it was actually something that I had to learn after leaving and going to college, that, like, oh, there's, like, there's animosity towards like things like orange chicken, whatever. And and I think it was when I watched the documentary Searching for General Tso, did I realize that, like you were saying, Chinese Americans really did have to cater to American palates to survive, because like at the time, Chinatown in San Francisco, they were basically ostracized, and they didn't have the resources to really, go and be employed by these white people. So they're like, okay, like, let's make it so white people will come to us and our restaurants and make it successful. And I think food is always changing, and it changes with the culture too. It changes with like what's going on at the time. But I completely understand your reaction too.
It's also interesting, especially with, I think, because there's so many Chinese people, but just how they are, like, with food, they're kind of, so I noticed, and I don't know if people notice or talk about it, but you know how, like, most sushi restaurants, especially in New York City, they're owned by Chinese people?
I have noticed that. I haven't investigated that, but I've noticed it.
I kind of want to investigate, just because I love sushi. It's kind of my favorite food. And every time I go in, I could hear, they're speaking, and I could hear either it's Mandarin or Cantonese. And I was like, oh, these are Chinese people. And then like almost every like kind of not not the fancy sushi place, just like the regular sushi place they're owned by, and it's just like interesting. And then I remember going to one in Flushing. And there were some people eating there, and they were like white, and they served this, like the traditional like boiled fish, like the steamed fish that we usually make, where it's just like a whole fish and there's soy sauce and whatever. So that was on the menu, but it's obviously not Japanese food. And so they ordered it, and they're so like amazed by it. They're like, "This is delicious. We don't usually get this," but they kept thinking it's Japanese cuisine because they are. I mean, it is a sushi restaurant, and so they kept like so. But then I was like, I wanted to be like, they're Chinese. This is actually Chinese food. So I feel like Chinese people are still in that survival mode where they're just gonna take any like if they see success in something, they're just gonna take and own it, kind of like sushi restaurants.
Do you feel negatively about that, or do you wish it were different in any way?
I used to. I don't know. It's hard because I feel like there's a lot of copying, and there's not a sense of originality maybe with most of the. I don't want to say like Chinese people, but just like in general, because there's a lot of like songs and like movies and even like restaurants. There's like they're just like copies of each other, and they don't care. Like they feel like that's their right to do, because they see it's good, so they're just gonna do it. So they don't need, I guess, that sense of originality. So it's the same with the catering to American kind of thing. Like it's still a survival kind of thing, but so yeah, I don't because being born in America, I'm like I want my voice to be out there. I want to show I'm individual, and everything I create is like genuine and me. So I feel like that is a very maybe American point of view. And then with other places, they just want to make money or they just want to survive, and that's
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know.
What do you wish would happen?
I don't know. Because I don't want to put my dreams and wishes to other, because it's just like a different point of view. So I feel weird saying like I hope everyone has their their whatever makes them happy, they put it out there instead of trying to have like more of a subjective or not like objective point of success, like money, I guess, versus being proud of what you're making. I feel like it's like different.
So from Peggy's story, Panda Express story, do you feel like your perspectives have changed at all, or do you still feel this way about Chinese restaurants? And
it's definitely less hatred because I know and it seems like the philosophy of Panda Express is people versus profits, so I love that. I still won't eat because it's expensive. And I guess that's the other thing. Even though it's fast food, it's like expensive, for Chinese food. Like
I haven't been there in a long time, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's. I think right now it's like a Chipotle kind of thing where you get a bowl and then you pick whatever. So I think they're like $10 or $11 per meal, something like that on average. But if you go to like a non-named fast food Chinese restaurant, it's so much cheaper and it's basically the same, and it's not like mass produced. So that's still there. So when people love Panda Express, it's kind of perplexing when I'm like, but you could buy cheaper.
Yeah.
And you could support, the local Chinese, families or whatever. So,
Yeah. It feels like, from what I'm hearing, you have like two opposing point of views because Peggy did do the American dream and did like do everything she could to succeed. But then there's like also, like you're saying, the local Chinese restaurants that just sort of do the same thing over and over again, but you'd rather support that
for sure
than Panda Express.
Yeah, and I think that's always the conflict of how to identify yourself as an Asian American, like which side. And, there's backlash with people who feel like, and this goes back to the comedy thing, like who, if we're like catering to white people, Americans, but then in my head, I'm like, but we're American, like we're catering to ourselves because we're all Americans. Either we were born here or we lived here for a long time. And then there's that, and then there's also you want to put your own experience out there. So with stories that I want to tell and show, I get conflicted where they're like, I don't want to tell a story that's about being Asian or being an immigrant. I feel like we hear that a lot. I just want, if there's any like TV shows or movies out there, I just want them to have an Asian person as a lead without needing to say all that history and that backstory. And I get that because then it shows the normalizing. But then also at the same time, that is your experience. You do have like immigrant parents or racism or whatever you're facing. So you want to tell that too, because then that puts it out there and people actually know and understand that specific storyline. So it's like the two, like, I think right now I want to tell more of my specific history than to be like, well, I'm going to be in this show where we don't have to talk about, the Asianness of it. But eventually I think we'll get there where we don't have to.
Yeah.
But for now, I think it is important to tell kind of like what we grew up with and how, experiences are.
I think it is important because a lot of people don't know what the Asian American experience is. Yeah. They just think it's white adjacent, which it's not. But a lot of people conform to that because it's unfortunate. But I personally do believe the Asian community has a lot of issues that we need to address, like a lot of misogyny, a lot of anti-Blackness, and a lot of privilege too, especially East Asians. Like we never talk about our own privilege in this conversation. So I think it is important to highlight the Asian American experience and show that it is there. We do have a different experience than what a white American might experience as well. And hopefully we can get to normalization.
But little steps we have to take.
Yes. That's why I'm surprised you didn't love To All the Boys I've Loved Before, because it was basically just that.
Because I went to film school, so I have and I feel like I don't love everything. Like I'm gonna find fault in everything. So it's like balancing it out.
So what are some of your favorite films that have come out recently that...
I am in the age of, I do think television is more powerful than film now. Just because building of the story and the characters in a series, and you get so much more out of it than like a 2-hour movie. Though I'm also like loving, like I always love short films too, because then it's just like one scene and you kind of get everything right away. You don't need like the whole backstory. But I did love Bao a lot, the Pixar short.
I sobbed. Sobbed. I could not stop crying. Yeah. When I watched Bao. And I watched it over the holidays, and I was at my partner's family's place, and he's white, and I was just like, I felt so alone. Like, and it's not their fault. I was just like, oh my God, I'm such a bad daughter. It was like this whole guilt thing that washed
so much
over
guilt.
me.
I always, yeah, and I connected with it because it was so hard. Like growing up in New York City too. Like people ask, like, oh, what is, crazy New York City. But then, like, grew up in Queens, and I grew up in Harriet Beach, which is, no one really knows that neighborhood, but it is kind of like a white neighborhood. So then, and it's kind of far from everything. So a lot of times, like, my parents they're pretty strict in terms of they just want me to be in the house all the time. Like, if I have a play date, they'll, like, drive me there and pick me up. Like, they're making sure, like, I like, the schedule of it. So every time I go out, and this goes into, like, college maybe even, I just feel, like, nervous because I can't just, like, let go and have fun because in the back of my head, my dad's waiting for me. Like, they're waiting for me to pick me up to go home. And because we live far, I couldn't really, like, take the subway and just go home. I never had like keys to my house. It's just my parents just orchestrate it every time I go out. So explaining that to my friends is so hard. Like they don't get the guilt and the ease. Like it's so easy to just leave your house, hang out with your friends, and then come home. Like what's the big deal?
Yes.
So it's just that, and then of course, like I didn't date at all in high school. I mean, probably because I was awkward, so it's just like, so I didn't have dates available for me. But like dating was not a thing to do. So that part,
Yeah. Growing up, my friends, who are mostly white, would always just be like, just tell your parents that you're a grown-ass woman.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh my God, I'll be killed, basically. Like, you'll see the headlines of me being murdered by my own family.
Like, you
No,
never
I'm kidding.
do you, like, talk back to your... you don't do... I don't know.
Well, growing up, I think I was a bad kid. I was always fighting with my mom. I was very... Americanized, I guess you would say. But I also like put weird pressure on myself to do well in school too, because it's weird because my parents were just like, you should date. Like they were worried about my mental well-being because I was so obsessed with going to college because I think now looking back as an adult, it was like a fear-based anxiety thing of like, oh, like that's the only way I can be stable is if I go to college, because I felt like growing up it wasn't a very, like it was stable, like they never made me like starve or something, but like I knew so much of what my parents were going through financially that I felt like, okay, the only way I can get us out of it together is if I do well and like go to college.
So nice.
But then even when I was like working a corporate job, I was just like, I'm going to fucking kill myself if I keep working this corporate job. And now I'm like back to square one of being like in an unstable artist place. But thankfully my parents are very supportive people.
Good.
They were just like, we always knew you wanted to write and be a storyteller and that's fine. But then take care of us when we're old. So that's another pressure I think about all the time.
Yeah, I think definitely more my mom. My dad's very like independent, so he's like whatever. But my mom's like, don't forget about me. Because they, in their heads, we would live with them, even like after we get married, we'll live.
Yes.
But yeah, so one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life is telling my parents that I'm moving out with a boy to Greenpoint, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Because it was moving out. It was living with a boy who, I was dating at the time. So not like married. Because, in their heads, like, you have to get married before you live, together. And also in New York City, it's, like, expensive. So they're like, you get to live here for free. Why would you pay, like, whatever, $1,600 for, like, a small apartment in Greenpoint? And that's when it was hard because I feel guilty and I knew like the reasons why it doesn't make sense, and it felt selfish because it was for my independence. Like there's no way I could live with my parents in my early 20s, and it was definitely the independency that I value, that I think some people, or like my parents, don't see. Or it's weird because they've came to America kind of by themselves. Like my dad was the first one here, first out of his family to kind of come here. So, I would think he gets independency, like, going to another country. I think he was like 19 or something. But then he still wants, I think, that culture and tradition of families stay together all the time. So when I had to make that decision of like, I need to move out, I can't, I felt like I was hurting them, like, and then like, of course, like my boyfriend at a time, my friends at a time, they're like, I don't get, like my parents kicked me out when I was in high school. They want me to leave. So it's just like that difference. So that was, and then we did like, and I don't really fight with my parents. Because I couldn't handle because I think I talked back once to my mom, and it was just so drawn out, and it was so dramatic, and I was like, I can't. So whenever they yell at me, or if there's something that I disagree with them, I just kind of take it in. I was like, whatever, it's fine.
You're such a good Chinese daughter. I am terrible. So many fights.
Probably better.
No. So many fights. So many dramatic, drawn out fights.
About like little, my sister's
little
the same.
things.
Yeah, my sister.
Yeah, are you the
old?
Are you
Yeah,
older?
I'm the older. My sister is 7 years younger.
Oh my
and
gosh.
She definitely fights with my mom.
We have it flipped. My brother is 7 years older.
And is your brother good with you?
I think he is much more traditional, and I think he. I don't want to say he was like groomed to be the traditional, but he's the only son, and like growing up, obviously they're like, you're gonna uphold the Chang legacy, and that was like kind of the pressure that they put on him. So like even my grandparents, of course, they like, treated him differently as I was like the baby of the household. So I think for me, I also really valued my independence. I really valued like creativity and like art. And doing my own thing and traveling and I think that made me and my mom and I butt heads a lot because she's better now, but like even I have this memory of her saying, because I was obsessed with the idea of being in Doctors Without Borders when I was in middle school, because I was like, that's so cool. You can travel and help people. And then I was just like, wait, I don't want to be a doctor. That's crazy. But yeah, so in middle school, I remember she was saying like, oh, like you shouldn't be a doctor. You should marry a doctor because if you're too smart or if you're too hard-headed, then like men won't want to marry you. And I remember telling her like, and that was like another fight. I was just like, I don't want to marry anyone. Like, and then she would get mad at me for not wanting to marry someone or having kids. And like, we would just like always have these little fights about like the dumbest things. And even when I started dating Garrett, he's white and did not attend an Ivy League institution. That was like their excuse. They're like, it's not because he's white. It's because he didn't go to an Ivy League. And he's not like an engineer or finance person. Like my dad, we've been together for 7 years. And to this day, my dad still like pretends he does not exist, like in the same room. And it's just crazy. And it's only like last year did my mom finally come around. It's just like, oh yes, we love Garrett. But I suspect it's because she's like, this is your only chance to have kids now. Like
it goes into the other.
Yes. And like every time we're on the phone, she's just like, when are you guys getting married? When are you having kids? And it's just like that story. And now that's the fight we have.
My fight is definitely the kid thing, because we got, like, luckily I married the person who I moved out. Otherwise, I could see like them going like, you moved out, you did all that, and you break up, But and they love my husband Grant. They love him, and Grant's really good with them too. Like they talk a lot. We eat dinner with them almost every week because they live in New York too. So obviously, so we eat dinner with them once a week. So that maintains that relationship. And I maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I had a full-time job now. Like before, I was freelancing with art and stuff, so they were always on me with that. But now I have that job thing. I still do my comedy thing, which they're embracing because I have the job thing. So now, like, the one last thing is having a kid.
Yes. Yes.
So, like, but yeah, and that's another conversation. Like, I don't, it's. I don't
Yes,
know.
you have to teach me how to be a better Chinese daughter. I'm bad at it.
It's just patience, I guess.
Oh, I'm very impatient. That was something my mom would always yell at me about. Just be more patient and
I
like,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, I think from being like quiet and just observant, I think that's what is in my personality of like, I have to hold back a lot, which I'm working on, like trying to be vocal at the right moments now. But I think with that, I'm able to see like the bigger picture a little bit. Sometimes, I mean, now I'm still like, when I'm angry at something, I'm like, oh, but it's helping me to like step back and be like, okay, why am I angry? Who are saying, because I feel like I'm always kind of like the translator, especially when my parents fight or my mom fights with my sister. I'm like, wait, do you see why there was this misunderstanding? Because it's always misunderstandings. And I could see
Yes.
like their points of view. They're both right in a way, but there's no right and wrong. So I'm like translating like, oh, you said, you're angry because you thought she said that or whatever. So it's like,
Yeah.
doing that.
I need you in my family. Seriously. Whenever I go back, it's like drama all the time.
Yeah.
So I need a mediator in my family too.
Yeah, I'm the mediator.
So you were saying you're very observant. You see the bigger picture. What is a bigger picture you can offer the listeners from, either Peggy's story or your personal story? And what do you hope that it's something they can take away with?
So I think, and this is not my mission statement, but my thought right now is how Asians are different from Asian Americans. I feel like that keeps muddled all the time, especially with the whitewashing and all that. All the arguments are like, we interviewed people from Japan, like actual Japanese people, and they were okay with the whitewashing, or they were okay with whatever. And then it's like, but everything of this is happening in America, and it's affecting Asian Americans, and we are the ones who face racism. People from Japan, from China, like they don't have racism really.
Well, it's because they're largely a homogenous country.
Yeah. So it's like,
and they don't experience what we experience here.
Right. So it's that thought of you can't, that's not a, defending answer of like they're okay with it, and it's about like us being too sensitive or whatever. But now like we have to insert ourselves in.
Yeah. And I think to that point, it also shows that we're not just one big personality all from China or Japan or wherever.
Yeah, there's the South Asian, like all of that.
They like interview 2 people and they're like, oh, I don't care that Scarlett Johansson was Asian. They're like, look at our 2 sample size from Japan.
Yeah. And then with that too, with our own, like as we were touching upon, like our Asian Americans being racist with ourselves and like like our own inner conflicts.
Yes.
I think, like, I realized that I think change is, you should accept change, I guess, or knowing that you will eventually change, and you shouldn't stay. You shouldn't have like the same points of view and the same ideas all the time. And knowing there's hope that the world and the community changes. Because I think a lot of Asians feel defenseless because of the past, of the history. And now they're like, we have to find our voice. We have to fight for, our rights and everything. But then sometimes that's when like Black Lives Matter, I feel like they don't get that. And that's like some of the groups. So it's like knowing not knowing our place, but knowing that we aren't alone and we have to support the other minority groups or the other groups that are facing oppression, but also not overstepping their history and their points of view, because it isn't the same. It's all different. But then knowing, like, you know, don't hold a grudge from what happened in the past, in history, where you weren't around. Knowing that, you know, we should all help each other out and not be angry and still not group everyone as the same. Like, we can't be like, all white people are, you know, we do it a lot. We're like, oh, this, you know, white people, blah, blah, blah. But we should try not to. Because then we're doing,
than I am.
then we're doing the same thing they're doing to us, you know, like.
Yeah.
So that open-mindedness and kind of checking yourself. Because I do, you know, I still, even when, you know, like this podcast is important and we're talking about all our experiences, but then I do catch myself saying white people or like Asian men or, you know, like grouping everyone.
Yeah. It's definitely really hard because I do get a lot of backlash about like, oh, you're putting a lot of white people together. And I'm just like, but you should know by now, knowing me and knowing this podcast and like what I stand for, it's not you, a white person. Right. It is literally white supremacy and like the idea or theory or whatever of white supremacy that lingers in this country.
Right,
and that shows up in art and media and history.
Yeah.
Before we were talking off the recording about like how history is regulated in every country. And and I think this podcast is striving to unregulate it and like decolonize it because it is largely written by white men. And it is, you know, like even I don't know a lot of my own history, Chinese American history.
Yeah.
And it was like through this podcast that I did learn that, oh, there were actually Chinese American Civil War soldiers. And I was just like, I just thought we built a bunch of railroads and basically did nothing and came for gold. And because that's the history I've been fed too. So I think it's important to also make that distinction that it is not being like, oh my God, white people and like individuals. It is like that idea of white supremacy that we have to dismantle and stand in solidarity with other people of color as well. Which what frustrates me about the Asian community is that largely we don't. Largely we keep to ourselves and we don't have these conversations about Black Lives Matter because I don't know why, because we don't. And when we do, it's about not getting into Harvard, which is deeply embarrassing. And I don't even want to know why we're just like talking about affirmative action in Harvard. And that's the only thing that makes the news. And it's just like, ugh, how embarrassing. Yeah, it's just embarrassing. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think, there's just so many layers, and then just stepping back a little bit and looking at the bigger picture is the thing. And then understanding our parents, where they're coming from, but then knowing that, you know, we're having different experiences.
Yeah. So from Peggy's story, what do you hope listeners can gain from that? Specifically about Panda Express or them being self-made billionaires? Yeah. Is there anything you want listeners to take away from that?
Just again, just like don't hate until you know, because so much hatred for Chinese American food, like fast food. But then when you really know the story and the people behind it, then you're just gonna be supportive of it than just hating the idea of catering to Americans or people outside your group. It's just like the history is useful and important. Yeah.
Do you see yourself going to Panda Express in the future?
No. I'll just support my local Chinese food. Yeah. But if I have a hankering for orange chicken, maybe. It's so sweet.
It is very sweet. Yeah. I mean, I haven't gone in years either. I never knew that Panda Express was started by a Chinese couple, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
And now they're
And yeah, they're
living
still
large.
in it. It's not like a bigger company like, bought them and then like put it everywhere. Like they're still like owners and founders and creating this.
Yeah.
like,
Do you know if
system.
they're creating anything new or anything we should look out for on the menus for listeners who love Panda Express?
No, I think their branding is completely like a little bit changed. Just because there are two of them pop. Like I work by Columbia, and there's one by Columbia now just opened like maybe less than a year ago, and then there's one by Woodhaven Boulevard where like the Trader Joe's. It's like this.
Yeah.
weird
And
thing.
I just saw a new one in downtown Brooklyn as well.
So I guess good for them.
Yeah. Because John and I were having a conversation, and he said there weren't any in New York, but he like knew there were some in DC and stuff. But I
Okay.
think
Yeah, I guess
now
that's
they're
probably
popping up
yeah.
in New York.
Yeah, because I always remember. I think I've been to some. Yeah, when we would go on vacations, and like how our parents they just want to eat Chinese food, and it's anything they can get. So if they have to eat at Panda Express, then they will. So I
Yeah.
think those are my Panda Express experiences.
Yeah, I think maybe I've eaten it at an airport, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, my brother loved orange chicken, so I think in my childhood my brother and I probably went to get some Panda Express. But other than that, I don't have a.
Yeah.
Didn't they also open P.F. Chang's? Is that part of that? No,
they
is P.F.
didn't.
Chang's completely different?
It's different, but it's also owned by an Asian person.
Oh,
I think
okay.
a Chinese person.
Oh,
Yeah. So
didn't
again,
know that
because
either.
I think, I think someone maybe it was one of the chefs, like famous chefs, who was bashing on it being like, American place. But then someone was like, "Oh, it's actually owned by an actual."
Yeah.
Because there's the backlash of when white people make Asian food and they have like expensive Asian food, and it's like that's not your culture.
the Williamsburg or Brooklyn darling
yeah.
Winsun is actually a white chef behind it, and the owner is Taiwanese American. So
Yeah.
there's also that. And it's a 4-hour wait to get into Winsun,
Right.
a Taiwanese American place.
How do you feel?
Oh, I don't care. I don't care. When I first went to Winsun, I thought it was really good, and it's very true to Taiwanese food. It's gotten, like, I don't know if it's just like the second time I went, it was just like a little saltier for me. So I was just like, oh, maybe it's just because it's gotten so popular. But I haven't gone because it's always a 4-hour wait, and I'm like, I can just cook this myself and better.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I really like Whole Foods in the East Village. It's Taiwanese beef noodle soup, and the chef is Taiwanese, and I think he's from Arcadia, California. And yeah, it's really good food. I mean, I don't care as long as it's good. I'm like and authentic. I don't really care if like the chef is white. I mean, even Ivan Ramen is a white chef, but he studied in Japan, and he has his own ramen shop in Japan too.
Right.
And I think there was like a documentary about him, and I think he really immersed himself in the culture, and I think that's really valuable, and I think that's when it's not cultural appropriation, when you actually have an appreciation for the culture and the food, and you're actually studying it, and you're not just making it because it's popular right now and making it badly. And I think he's like one of those people who actually do their due diligence in making good food. Shout out to Ivan Ramen. I'm just like giving free shout outs here.
I'm really hungry now.
I know. Yes,
it's
but we
growling.
are running out of time. Is there anything you want to plug from your personal life and art, whatever, anything coming up?
Yeah, I guess Asian American Film Thing, March 1st. I'm going to do a new stop motion animation. And yeah, I guess my YouTube channel, Angel Luristic.
You want to spell that?
Yeah, I don't even. Angeleristic. I think I made that in like high school or something. Like that name was like, ugh, and I kept it. Anyway, all of my stop motions are there, and some of my comedy stuff is there. Yeah, I'm having like a new show, which I hope becomes like a monthly show soon, on this day, and it's related because it is about history in a way. So it's based on a time hop app because I'm obsessed with like memories and all that. So there's like personal memories, but then we also go into all the historical events that happen on that particular day when we do a show. And one of the bits we do, we look at everyone who was born on that day and then highlight someone who is either a person of color or someone who isn't known, like not famous. So we talk about that person. And we also list all the deaths that happen and pick like our favorite death.
Favorite death.
Yeah. So just like everything about that day.
That's
a
cool.
good show. Yeah.
Oh, the only thing I can offer is I share a birthday with Tupac, so there's that.
Well, I'll take note.
Yes. That's so great. Any Instagram social handles you want to plug?
Yeah.
You don't have to. If you don't.
All my Twitter and Instagram, it's either Angel Yao or Yao Angel because it's taken.
Yes.
So yeah, there are a few like Angel Yaos out there. That's not me. You'll know. When you search, you'll figure it out. And then I guess Asian Pop.
Oh, yes,
yeah,
Asian Pop.
Yeah, we're going to do more shows.
Remember, guys, it's satire.
Yeah. We're not making fun of Asians. We're making fun of ourselves. But we have a date at Joe's Pub in July. So that's going to be out there. And then, we'll try to do more like monthly shows with Asian Pop as well.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming and sharing the Panda Express story. I never would have known, honestly. So you can find this podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Subscribe, rate. We're presented by Brick Studios, and you can follow us at Now in Color Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Or actually, on Twitter is now_in_color. But yeah, find us anywhere on social. And thank you so much for listening, and thank you for coming again, Angel.
Thank you.
Thank you.